Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. This is Tuesday, April 21st, and it is our 2 o'clock daily update on the status of the coronavirus outbreak in Westchester County. We have statistics that have been made available today that are current that show that 24,656 Westchester residents have tested positive for over 73,000 people, which continues to be the largest per capita testing of any jurisdiction in New York State. Because we had 2 weeks ago a significant number of positives already, the number of active cases right now has, for the first time in 10 days, dipped below the 10,000 case mark. Today we mark that we have 9,852 active cases. That is a continuing sign of the decrease of the presence of the virus in an active situation. We have 1,074 people listed as hospitalized. That number is decreased from the prior day, and that represents slightly under an 11% hospitalization rate. I repeat the same thing every day. The target hospitalization rate is to keep it under 20%. That has been the case, and now that hospitalizations are dropping and the total number of active cases are dropping, we see that we have flattened the curve here in Westchester County. Now, Westchester is part of a much larger metropolitan area, and what's happening in New Jersey and Connecticut and the city of New York, on Long Island and in the Hudson Valley also matters to us very greatly. So we are trying to do the things that we can do to control the demand here in Westchester County for hospital beds. We're within that demand level, and so the news is basically very good, except for deaths. We have lost now 809 people in Westchester County. That number increased by more than 30 overnight from yesterday's total. We have, however, in the last week, had 200 people die from coronavirus. In the prior week, we had over 300 people die. So as much as every death is a tragedy, we see that the rate of fatalities is less over the last week than it was over the prior week. We hope that's a good sign. We hope that that drop continues and we reach the point where there are no deaths and everybody gets through the disease on a fairly straightforward basis. There are comparable numbers, and we invite you to go to the New York State Department of Health website. They have a tracker, COVID-19 tracker, and you can look at all kinds of graphs and charts that compare the different counties all across New York State, get an idea of where Westchester is in the contagion vis-a-vis other communities. We are firmly setting below the island and below New York City in our incidence of this, even though we were one of the first jurisdiction. We were the first jurisdiction in this state to deal with it, and then one of the few first in around the country. I have a very short report today. The most important element deals with the issue of property taxes and when your county property taxes are due. At our request, Governor Cuomo has issued an executive order, number 202.22, which temporarily suspends 2 sections of the laws of Westchester County and 1 section of the real property tax law. We're going to be outlining the details of this to the Board of Legislators and to the respective elected officials around Westchester County. But the gist of it is that Westchester County has negotiated through the governor to be able to extend for those people who can assert that they have had an economic hardship due to the COVID-19 outbreak, extend without penalty the payment of county property taxes from the April 30th due date until July 15th. This is an important priority for us, and we understand there is some disagreement amongst other elected officials about whether this was good or bad. Our position, I think, is very clear. The individuals who live in Westchester County are suffering greatly from this outbreak and from the shutdown of society that has occurred. That shutdown has cost some people their jobs, are unemployed now where they were previously employed. For some people, it's been a dramatic cutback in hours that they work when they work in hourly wage positions. This has represented the closing of certain businesses, and when those businesses are closed, the people who own those businesses are in difficult financial shape. I've already been made aware of a number of smaller businesses now that will have to close because of this shutdown, and not knowing how long the shutdown is going to take, because we have put public health priorities first. And we want to get on the positive side of the ledger for dealing with this before we start to fully open up all these elements of society. Well, in the meantime, businesses are failing and individuals are having financial difficulty and hardship. So it was my desire, and I think a rational one, to extend the deadline for those who are affected, not universally, but those who are affected negatively, specifically because of this outbreak, to July 15th. July 15th is the day that the federal government has established for federal taxes being due. And it's also the same date, July 15th, that state taxes are due. And that deadline has been extended as well. We just passed April 15th a couple of days ago. We're in the heart of the contagion. And now by extending it 3 months to July 15th, it has made it a little bit easier for people to deal with their hardship and potentially over that period of time, get whatever benefit is coming from the federal stimulus program, either in individual resources to business or to an individual. The fact that New York State unemployment situation has been a difficult straits. They hopefully have resolved those issues, and now those who are entitled to unemployment benefits will get them, and that will hopefully give those who own property and own property taxes the ability to pay it. So we have advocated for the extension of that. Because of the way taxes are collected in Westchester County, they are collected by towns and city governments, not by the county itself. This brought town leadership and city leadership into play. Existing law gave us no authority with cities, and it gave us some authority with towns, but the discussion back and forth from some of the towns is that it was a financial difficulty that they would deal with if they just overrode all of the different penalties. So the executive order that the governor has given our office, county executive office, the ability to negotiate with any city or any town and forestall the full payment of taxes that they owe to the county government on May 25th. And under current law, and it's been a law for quite a while, towns and cities must remit to the county government 60% of the money that they collected on behalf of county taxes on May 25th. Some communities may have difficulty reaching that number, some communities may not. But this executive order now allows the county executive to be able to forego a 60% number and negotiate a lower number, which will save cash flow for those towns and cities. However large or small an amount it is, that flexibility now exists with us, which it did not before. This executive order grants that. What this also does is grant that those towns and cities can forego any late fees through July 15th. So there is now a mechanism to eliminate having those late fees. There has been a discussion, a concern expressed in some quarters about what represents the economic hardship necessary for an individual or for a business to be able to claim this benefit of not having to pay a late fee. And we think it's a very simple standard. Many people have argued that it's very complicated. It is not complicated at all. The standard that we've identified countywide, we were perfectly prepared to do this earlier. We thought giving flexibility to municipal governments would be helpful. They have argued that no, they don't want that. They want a single standard. So we have a single standard. For an individual to qualify for the later due date for the taxes, first of all, they must be on the STAR program. They must be STAR eligible. STAR eligibility means that you must be a resident of the house that you're paying taxes on. If you have a second home or investment property, they are not eligible for this. They are a business expenditure to you. It generates money for you. You can only do this under STAR in your own personal home. The other element that involves there is a cutoff, an income cutoff of $250,000 that applies. If you are above that level, then the relieving of fees does not apply. And for businesses, I believe the cutoff we have is $1 million in revenue for the business. And that helps us target small businesses, and it helps us target people that are at a financial level in which this kind of a benefit would be helpful to them. The other eligibility factor that we placed in is that you cannot be paying your property taxes through an escrow account, a bank or a mortgage or some other note for which you pay mortgage to that individual, to that entity, and they pay their taxes on behalf of that. Those organizations are capitalized, have the resources, and can pay the taxes on time, and we expect them to pay it on time. So the benefit that we're giving out is for the little guy, the guy in the middle, the person who has lost their job or lost their business income and now faces an April 30th deadline of property taxes and can't come up with a lump sum given their circumstances. And that is really something we think is important. We don't think you should apply a late fee to somebody in that situation. We don't think that they're failing to pay for bad reasons. They're failing to pay because they have economic hardship, and that government should understand that. And we should figure out how to answer that need that the individual has. The federal government did it by extending the date to file for taxes, and so did the state. In most cases, people who get refunds will file right away to get the refunds right away. People who will delay are the people that have further tax obligation, and this provides them additional time to be able to file. But the federal government and the state government keeps a percentage of your income in withholding. So the state and the federal government do not find themselves with an empty coffer as of the time of tax collection. They can roll that date off easily. It's more difficult for the county, for the towns, the villages, the cities, and the school districts. So we can't control all of this. But the executive order, we went to the governor, we made a case, and the governor was very gracious because he understood that the benefit of this is to the individual taxpayer that is in need, to the taxpayer, the individual or the small business that is in need. That is the person that we are trying to help with this action. Now, in order to make it acceptable for the towns and the cities, because they argue that that their cash flow will be impacted if they forego those fees, we have now made it possible for them to pay the county less for their obligation to us. And so it's an example of trying to make the benefit be inclusive of everybody. The individual taxpayer can pay the town or the city at a later date because they're impacted financially. The town or the city can negotiate with the county a lesser amount to pay, which helps them with their cash flow issues. And depending on the the nature of the tax receipts in each different community, there may be a different amount that we'll deal with. And we intend to negotiate each of those things out as openly and as honestly as we can. This authority has been granted to us in the executive branch. We're the ones responsible for managing the budget. We're the ones responsible for determining if we get less tax revenue on May 25th, that we still manage the government, the cash flow as necessary in order to meet our obligations as a county government. We believe we're balancing all these different issues. We're not taking the side of one group versus another group, but we're trying to keep it all in balance. Frankly, there is no direct benefit to the county government or to the county executive's office with this strategy. We are foregoing money. We're leaving money on the table to benefit the towns and the cities in order to benefit the individual taxpayer in need so that they're not pressed up against the deadline. There's no direct benefit to the county or the county executive's office by doing these things. But I think it shows our sensitivity that in a time of crisis, we're asking people to sacrifice. We're asking you to socially distance. We're asking you to put on masks. Certain things have been shut down in the society that you're accustomed to benefit from normally. And it is not unrealistic for people to say, well, what are you doing to help us? What are you doing to sacrifice to help us? And this is one small way that we think we can do that. So there'll be much more discussion about it. Our friends in the press will certainly like to speak to us. We'll be happy to share the executive order, how we intend to implement it. We're going to be dialoguing with the Board of Legislators and the municipal officials. This program is not a mandatory program. If a particular town or city says, no, we don't really want to do that, that's within their prerogative. We're not going to force them to do it. They'll have to determine how they talk to their taxpayers and how they impose the fee or not impose the fee, a lesser fee, a larger fee. That's part of the dialogue between the taxpayers and their local government. But this county administration is on record as wanting to save the taxpayers this obligation, and we think we're doing the right thing. Now, let me close out just by reiterating what we talked about yesterday. There are two changes that involve opening park services that are not already open. This weekend, this Saturday, we will reopen golf at 2 of our 6 county public golf courses, Mohansick Golf Course in Yorktown and Hudson Hills Golf Course in Ossining. In these 2 cases, we intend to apply all of the different methods to ensure social distancing and to do those things that will protect our workforce so that those that will go to play golf at those 2 locations, recreational benefit, something that's very important to individuals, that they will be able to enjoy that time. Both of these 2 clubs are structured in a way, they're both in the northern part of our county. We have 2 other golf courses in Yonkers, 2 on the Sound Shore, but both of these are structured in a way where the entrance and the operation is a little bit off the beaten path, and we think we can control the flow a little bit better than we might be able to at some of the other golf courses. We closed the golf courses 2 weekends ago because the state had a change in policy, which they announced on the ESD website, and they have now reversed that policy. And so with that reversal, now the opportunity is there for public courses to open. And so we're going to reopen 2 of our 6. We're going to see how it goes this weekend, maybe 2 weekends. We'll see how the test goes. If it's successful, then we'll open it up at other golf courses and perhaps to the full 6 golf courses. The intrinsic reason why we're doing this is that the recreation of the sport of golf, whatever you want to call it, you might see it as an elite sport. You might attach it to a particular demographic of age or what have you. But the bottom line is, in playing golf, you are not in direct contact with the other people playing golf. that if you follow certain rules, you can accomplish social distancing and at the same time have that recreation. That is the same way we view bicycling. That is the same way we view hiking. It's nothing intrinsic about the nature of the sport. Personally, I'm a big fan of baseball. Football is of interest to me. Football is a contact sport. Hockey is a contact sport. You are interacting with the other players head to head, colliding with each other. Basketball, perhaps more so than any. And we understand that the demographics of basketball and those who can play it skew much younger, and a lot of young kids love to play basketball, and the more basketball nets everywhere in urban centers. But in basketball, you come up close and personal with the other person. There's no way to socially distance. You can socially distance in golf, and that is the reason why we're reopening those two courses. We've also indicated that we intend to open Bicycle Sunday on schedule in early May, which will allow people to bicycle on Sunday mornings on the Bronx River Parkway. The terminus point for the route will not be the county center, because that's being used, set aside for hospital services, but will be at the Main Street exit of White Plains, which is right below that. And we'll structure it so that people can easily see how they access and then get to the parkway and bicycle up and down. We think bicycling is a great recreation for those who love it. It can be a family event. It can be something you do solo, but it is not something that will intrinsically put you in direct contact with other people. But we will have people out there on the Bronx River Parkway to enforce social distancing, so that even in those moments where you just take a break, that you have on masks and that you're prepared to interact with people in the appropriate context. So Bicycle Sunday and golf on our list of things. That does it for today's update of new information. We'll take some questions. Catherine Chaffee is with us here to give those to us. I'm gonna take a sip of water. Many people have asked about my cough. This is a seasonal allergy cough that I have. You may have noticed I've had it for more than 2 weeks, which is more than the incubation period for COVID. So if I were concerned about this tying into the illness, I would have been off the air by now. But this is of the folks who know me very well, know that I go through this in the months of March and April, and it finally relieves itself when there's a change, I guess, in the pollen in the atmosphere. But in any event, as I try to cough appropriately, we're still here to communicate as directly as we can. Catherine, are there questions that you'd like to direct to me?
First question from Jonathan Gordon. 3 Westchester residents are suing the World Health Organization over allegations that the organization was negligent in failing to timely declare the coronavirus a public health emergency of international concern. They're encouraging other county residents to join the class action. Do you believe the World Health Organization's response led to Westchester becoming one of the country's hotspots for coronavirus?
Well, I can't comment on the lawsuit. I'm not familiar with it. I saw it, last night for the first time in the media. But no, I don't think the World Health Organization has anything to do with Westchester having become the hotspot that it did. I don't think any of us know why the index patient contracted coronavirus. By our understanding, he had not traveled to China during the period of time prior to the incubation of the disease. And I think he himself does not know where he might have picked it up. He was a regular commuter on Metro North. He could have just as easily picked it up from somebody on Metro North who was asymptomatic, and that's what caused the expansion of it. Westchester became the first area to experience this in the New York metropolitan region. Westchester was the first area. New Rochelle was the first area. But now, as you look at this this infection as it has grown, New Rochelle is not the highest amount of cases in Westchester County. Westchester County is not the highest number of cases in New York State. As I heard somebody say, we may have been first, but we're certainly not the worst. So I don't think there's any particular reason why Westchester, other than circumstance, became the initial place where this took off. And I certainly don't correlate that to whatever the policies of the WHO are. I think right now we're heading in the wrong direction as we look to assess blame. There will be a time for assessing blame. There will be a time to assess who did what and should have done what, when, and how. But right now we have to work forward with where we are and what we have to accomplish. We have a challenge to test. We should focus on making sure that that testing is more easily available. We have a responsibility to socially distance, wear masks when we're out in public, in close proximity to other people. We ought to focus on that. We ought to focus on a way to stop spreading the virus if we can. And that doesn't mean opposing every type of activity. That means looking at each activity intrinsically to determine if that activity puts people in close quarters and thereby can help spread the virus. But, the desire to affix blame, I think, is, it's sort of a standard reality in public affairs. I've been in office long enough to know that you don't necessarily have to solve the problem. You just have to blame somebody else for the problem. We want to solve the problem to the best of our ability. That's what our focus is. A lawsuit to the WHO doesn't solve that. It addresses other issues.
Next question comes from Martin Wilbur. Regarding the executive order, would towns have to opt in or opt out to have their taxpayers take advantage of the July 15th deadline for county taxes?
It is a matter of negotiation between the towns or the cities and the county executive office. We will meet with those that are interested in meeting with us. We'll review the status of where they're at. We can finalize an arrangement that would reduce the amount that they would have to pay on May 25th to the county. And in exchange for that, we will ask them, or we require them, as part of this arrangement, to forego late fees. And if a town is prepared to do that, I know some are, we will make those arrangements. And then the residents of those towns, those cities, will have, when they qualify, because it's not an automatic benefit to everybody. You have to qualify, you have to assert that there's an economic hardship and make sure you fit the criteria for it. And then you'll have the benefit of being able to pay your taxes as late as July 15th and still have it be an on-time payment. But no town is required to do this. This is not mandatory. No city is required to do this. This is not mandatory. We think that our original intent also had an opt-out provision, and each town has to determine, each city has to determine what's right for them. We want to make this available in the spirit of partnership, but if a particular individual community chooses not to go in this direction, we're not going to compel them.
That was the last question.
All right, no other questions. With no other questions, we have a shorter report than usual, but we thank you for watching. We're scheduled again tomorrow, an 11 o'clock Facebook Live interview, and then again here at 2 o'clock to give you an update on the numbers and any other information that we have. For our friends in the press, anyone who wants to expand on it, they're happy to chat with us. Give us a call when this is over, and we'll have an expanded conversation one-on-one. And we appreciate you taking the time to watch. Again, continued good health, be safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.